Hey everyone, we're talking green clays today. Do I know everything there is to know about all of the green clays that exist? No, I don't. But I know enough, I think, to help you make a decision on what's the best green clay for you to use in your soap. Part of it depends on what is the purpose of you using the clay, because there are many reasons we use clay in soap. And one of them is to just color it naturally. A lot of people don't like to use dyes or micas, and coloring soaps naturally. Clays are a great way to do that, but there's a lot more to it. I hope you're paying attention to the my sob story up there, because I was mixing it and it didn't get recorded, so my bad. Um, but the purpose of this is to tell you a little bit about clays in general. If you've been following my series on how to use clays in melt and pour soap, then you've probably heard a little bit of this. I'm not going to go into much detail on it because I want to talk about green clays today. But clays can make your soap harder. It can help to anchor your scent, even in melt and pour soap. And of course, for coloring, it's fabulous for a natural colorant. And then we have whatever the skin properties. Um, you can't say it you have to say it just washes your skin. So you can't make claims, but we do know, at least I know from using it, clays do make the lather different. They do make the skin feel different. Some of them add slip to clay, which is great for shaving. It's why people use clays in shaving soap. And so now back to why green soap and green soap, why green clay and what kind of green clay. Well, one of the reasons people like to use green clay, other than the pretty green color, is the added benefits or supposed benefits of some of the organic matter that is contained in many of the green clays. And that is usually matter from plant life that has decomposed. Most of the time, you will find that is from the sea, from ancient seabeds and ocean life, sea life under the ocean, but other organic sources as well. And no, that will not rot in your soap. It has already been decomposed. It is not still decomposing, but it leaves you with some lovely minerals and trace minerals and other great nutrients in the clay. That's why people for years have used them for masks and skin treatments outside of soap. So when you put them in soap, what you're going to find is, you can't make claims because it's a wash off product. You rinse it off, you put it on, you rinse it off. But if you have ever used a clay soap, you will know there are some goodness to it. There are some goodness. Wow. There are some great things to the way it makes your skin feel. It can be exfoliating. Many clays are. Really, I'd venture to say all clays are. It just depends on the size of the grain of the clay as to how deeply it's going to exfoliate, how much. There are definitely soaps that just feel like they glide on like as smooth as can be, but they can still exfoliate. And then you'll find some, like the one I'm working with right now, that you see me stirring in the bottom. That one feels like wet sand. And that one is green zeolite clay. And zeolite is a family of clays that is formed from volcanic rock and ash. And that has to come in contact with water. I believe specifically with what do you call it? Alkaline water. But when it does that, that's part of what helps it form into zeolite clay. They are little more solid chunks, but they're tiny, and they're porous as well. So they do tend to absorb quite a bit of oil, and it's quite an exfoliating experience. Mild and gentle, but this one felt like sand. Seriously. Now I haven't used it in the soap. I've only mixed it in. But as I was mixing it in the glycerin, yes, you can use glycerin to incorporate clays into your soap. Do you need to be careful with amounts? Yeah, but you need to experiment with it. You need to know what your soap can tolerate, and your soap may be vastly different from mine, because the ranges I've seen in melt and pour soaps ranges anywhere from being able to incorporate 1% additives only up to 6% is the most I've ever seen. And it a lot of, if you overdo it, you may find a little extra glycerin do your soap sweating a little bit more, but it is going to set up as a soap unless you go insane with it. I use glycerin to disperse my titanium dioxide and my activated charcoal as well. I don't always use glycerin, vegetable glycerin, to incorporate clays, but I wanted to try it in this video, and let me tell you, it worked really well. I have not tried the green zeolite soap, which is the smaller of the containers you see there in front of you. I will be trying it soon. I will be testing all of them on camera at the end of the clay series, but the larger bucket there I'm stirring now is your sea clay, green sea clay. The zeolite, which is the other one, is, like I said, it's grainy. It's sand. It feels like sand. Which, could be really good if you're trying to exfoliate. I'm going to try it on my feet. I can't wait. So the other type of clay I'm using, the sea clay, there are some misunderstandings about it. And I don't even know if I'm totally getting the correct information on this, but I certainly did some research. There are many, many companies out there that will tell you that it's the same thing as French green clay. And I've found other sources that say that that is absolutely not true. And I tend to believe them because in researching on French green clay on its own, which I do not have and don't use in this video, but I did research it as a point of it, the sea clay being constantly referred to as the same thing. French green clay is an illite type of clay, and that is definitely not quite the same thing. An illite type of clay is going to absorb more moisture than your kaolin types of clay. And from what I see, sea clay is more of a kaolin type of clay. It is a type of kaolin clay that will have in it lots of trace minerals and other things that have formed in the mud, in the sea mud, because again, it was formed in ancient seas and ancient sea mud. So that it is much higher in kaolinite, which is the mineral that is in the rock kaolin. And when you hear it called kaolin clay, it's because it's formed from a rock made of kaolinite, which is the actual name for the mineral. And that is what is a larger composition in kaolin clays and in sea clay. So you will find some illite clays that also contain kaolin, and you'll find probably some kaolin clays that also contain illite, but they tend to name them after what the majority of the composition is. So sea clay is also one of the differences between sea clay and French green clay is the shade is a little bit different. I feel like the shade for French green clay is a little lighter and a little bit more hint of a blue. It doesn't look blue. It's just a bluer shade of green, if that makes sense. It's by no means blue, but the sea clay tends to be a bit of a muddy green. Khaki is the thing when I was thinking when I was making this, I was like, that's khaki color, sorta. I guess it depends. Some people call khaki a color closer to tan, and it's really not. But it does. This green leans more toward a tannish than a true green. Um, it's still really pretty, and I have used sea clay for years. As I'm hoping you're kind of watching there too, because what you're seeing me do is pour. Right now, you're seeing me pour the zeolite clay, the green zeolite clay, and I'm pouring it in layers because it is so sandy and so gritty that falls to the bottom. It's more heavily weighted and falls to the bottom, and I wanted it to try to incorporate more throughout the soap. So I end up layering it. You see my little timer out there. That is my phone that smashed when I dropped it on the asphalt of a parking lot. So definitely my own fault. And I have been struggling for a while to get a new phone because we've now purchased 4 and sent back 3. So we'll see. The saga of that continues, and maybe I will update you when I get full use of a new phone. But the reason I'm even pointing out my phone is because I was using my timer, and the only reason you might see me timing something like this is I am trying an Acorn Swirl with the clay soap. I'm trying it with the sea clay soap, and I did discover through this that sea clay soap is also a little heavy, but it still incorporates throughout the soap quite well. And that I knew from previous usage of sea clay. I've made sea clay soaps with oats, and they're one of my favorite soaps anyway. It's a very smooth texture, very fine powder, and but it is heavy enough that titanium dioxide is going to float ish. Usually, titanium dioxide is something that's going to sink in your soap, especially if you're pairing it with a clear base. It's going to sink. As many of you have probably discovered that, or maybe even seen me discussing it. I even show it a little demo of that in a couple of my beginner videos. But in this soap, I use, I've already pointed it out that I've used the Moroccan argan soap, the detergent free. So that is going to have a little bit of titanium dioxide in it. The white soaps do. Even if they have goat milk, even if they have coconut milk, all of those, they add a little bit of titanium dioxide to color it so it looks a little bit more like what you might picture goat milk looking like. So this does contain that. And I'm assuming that is that is why it's floating, that there's not some excess amount of oils that might be causing it to float. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing it's just that the sea clay is heavier than the titanium dioxide. And so this is kind of a spoiler alert because you haven't seen the final video. It still looks really cool. I'm come away very pleased with the look of it, but it's definitely tends to sit in the top half, which when you see me stir, you'll see I do dig it up quite a bit and turn it over a little. I think I probably could have swirled more with an Acorn Swirl. You usually try to do one zigzag and maybe repeat it if it looks like it's not doing much. But this one, it's a little bit of a different texture. The detergent-free soaps, when you're doing an Acorn Swirl, are going to behave differently. They have longer open time. It's also going to have a longer open time because I added clay, and that makes it stay a little bit soft. Maybe not liquid, but it's softer as it's setting up. It ends up being a harder bar, but it takes longer to solidify. And titanium dioxide also causes your soaps to not solidify as quickly. So you have a longer waiting time before you unmold typically. And so for this kind of a swirl where you want your timing everything, it makes it a little tricky because it's hard to know when to when to add the second color, when to stir it up, when to add the third color, when to all of that. It just is kind of an experimental thing. You're going to have to try it for yourself. If you were using the zeolite clay, you would have had to stir a lot more to get it dispersed in the swirl. And I didn't even give that one a go. I didn't even try that. I wanted to try the smooth one in the swirl and see how that did. So I'm getting ready. I took these came down to part of it having to do with the detergent free aspect of it. And part of it, I think, with the clays, like I said, it takes longer to set up. It got down to a very low temperature. I was pouring the white at like 111, I believe. And the same thing with that second layer, I'm pouring like 111, maybe even 110. It got really low before it set up. It's just good to know that, because sometimes, our soaps are usually setting up much higher than that. So it's just something to keep in mind that might give you a little bit more open time. It does get thicker, and that's another thing to keep in mind if you want your soap to remain a little thicker than as it cools, than just solidifying. It doesn't just stay liquid and then seize up on you suddenly. It's more of a slow process with that. Doesn't quite act like cold process soap. So I don't want you getting the thought that you're going to easily do a bunch of drop swirls and fancy cold process soap type things just because it's a little thicker. You might get away with some of those. I don't know, but I don't think you're going to have the same success as you would with cold process soap with those kind of designs. But it might make it at least a little easier to replicate it a little. I don't know. We'll find out, because I'm going to experiment with that down the road. But back to the properties of these soaps. The French clay, since I'm not really using it, I'm not going to talk much about it other than it's going to absorb more water because it's an Zeolite clay than the which means it's less absorbent as far as oil goes. It's probably a fairly good clay for mild, combating mild oily skin, that type of thing. It's going to absorb oil quite well, but I think it's not going to dry you out as much, although sea clay did not dry me out one bit. Spoiler alert, I've used it and I love it. So, but you will find that the sea clay is really superior, in my opinion, and I'm not, I don't have a microscope on my face or my arms or anywhere, but it is supposed to be quite good for removing impurities. And I know all clays do that, but this one is supposed to be really well known for removing impurities. Can you say that about your soap? Nope. You can say it cleans really, really well. You can say it cleanses quite well. But you don't want to go around trying to claim that your soap does anything to change your skin, because then it becomes a drug. So here is, I'm pulling out they finally set up, but my little rocks here. It's a fun mold to use when you have pour overs, in my opinion. It's not great because you see there's little pockets there of air. That's because I was trying to pour it as cool as I could. So I wasn't great at that. I probably should have either I spritzed it with alcohol. I don't even know if I did, or just waited a little bit longer and let it set up more. But it got, I was pouring it toward the end, and they were very cool, the zeolite bars, as I was pouring the layers. Here are the sea clay bars, and I just love them. I really only got 1.5 because I was pouring the extra, and those are just for me. Quick note on the fragrance oil I use, because I didn't really talk about that, but I've been using essential oils with these soaps because I want them to remain as natural as possible. You will not see me putting all natural on my labels, because that's not really a thing, at least in the US, that we can say with any sort of meaning. It's not regulated. So you'd just be kind of saying it just because you feel like it. But I wanted them to be as natural as possible for whom they are intended for, and you're hopefully seeing me unmold the big loaf now. Um, the both of the well, actually all of these, I used the same fragrance oil. It's not a fragrance oil, sorry, essential oil, and that is Micaelia alba leaf. That is the same thing as magnolia leaf, basically. And if you have not tried this as an essential oil, I highly recommend it. It does not smell flowery. It's not like a magnolia scent, but the magnolia leaf, it has a wonderfully fresh scent. It's maybe a hint of fruitiness, but not overtly, just like a little undertone of a fruity sweet note to it. It's fabulous. It's a wonderful scent. Um, it also, I can't say it does anything to your soap, but on its own, it has been used. I've used it in skincare products, and it is known to be quite good for your skin as well. Um, but yeah, it's just for your soap. It's just used as your fragrance because it's a rinse off product. And real quick hint here, I did take this out too hot. I've kind of learned how to do it without ruining my soap, and I took it out quite warm. Um, you don't want to poke your thumbs through. That's one thing you might want to go back and look at how I unmolded that loaf. And I was kind of massaging the back a little, and you can start feeling when it's soft, but it's not liquid. And that's super important because if it's liquid, you're just going to ruin your soap unmolding it. Um, but as you'll see as I coat these, one of the things I do occasionally is spritz my soap guillotine, my Uncle Andy's soap cutter, which is my very favorite, with alcohol itself. And that, for any soap that's a little on the sticky side, it helps it slide really well. It's definitely not a necessity, but I thought it made my job easier. I think I mentioned before in another soap I did, it also benefits you to spritz the blade, and whether that's for your soap guillotine or whether it's for a knife, which you'll see me using in a moment, because as I'm doing with the whole clay soap series, I am cutting these bars in half for, like I said, my own uses for these. I wanted smaller bars. So I cut them into 6 large, very large, chunky bars using my Uncle Andy's at about, comes out to be about between 1 1/4 and 1 1/8, maybe, just tiny bit, um, somewhere in between there. But they're chunky. They're big chunky bars. I get 6 out of a mold. It's a 40 to 42 ounce mold. And I get about, if I put things over on top of them, which I frequently do, embeds and fun stuff on the tops of the soap that make them stick out, then it's going to be even more than that. But typically my bars, like just cut straight like this, come out about 7 ounces, and I cut them in half, and you get approximately 3.5 ounces out of those little bars. Some of them might be closer to 4, depending. The clay does add a little bit of weight to your soap as well, so that they're a little denser than regular soap with no clays in them. And anyway, as I'm cutting, you see me spritzing. I'm spritzing the blade, and I'm spritzing the knife in a moment when I cut them in half. So that's the only reason I was even pointing out the cutting them in half, is use a knife and spritz it. I do that frequently, even if my soap isn't a little warm. But I'm not showing these close up yet as the whole bar, because they have quite a different look to them when I go to cut them in half. It changes the look of the swirl quite a bit. It's a little bit of a chunky swirl, but it still gets some genuine swirls in there, and I feel like it's quite pretty. The white, I did not add anything to the Moroccan argan soap for the middle color. I just left it pure white. I did add a little of the essential oil, and I was hoping for that swirl to stay a little bit more in the middle, but it looks just as pretty up top, as you'll see. I am not doing for any of my clay soaps, I'm not doing any lightbox pictures. I'm just doing close-ups at the end of the video. So you'll get a chance to look at them. I hold them up there maybe a little longer than I do when I have lightbox pictures for you. None of the clay soaps I'm doing are going to be transparent unless I add a single transparent layer to one. I haven't decided yet, but if I do that, I may put them in the light box so you can see how the light shines through. That's one of the biggest reasons I like to use the light boxes. It helps you to see the clarity, whereas it's not always possible just using my camera from up above, because you can't really get light from below without causing lots of problems, lots of lighting problems that I don't know how to deal with. So as we get toward where I'm holding them up, I wanted to mention that what I'm doing next, because I have several more clays I want to work with, and then I want to do at least two that are multicolor, multi-clay soaps. The next one I will probably do is going to be my all-time favorite clay. I'd venture to say that sea clay is my second favorite, but my all-time favorite is Cambrian blue clay. It is just gorgeous, and I love the way it makes my skin feel. It's I won't go into details on it because I'll do that when I record it, but it is a phenomenal clay. If you can get a hold of it, it's not always easy to find, but it's worth it if you can, for sure, at least for me, and we'll play with that. The multicolored ones I have in mind, one is going to be a landscape soap, and I won't give away many details on that. And another one is going to be a confetti soap that is containing some scraps of what you see in making of each of these clay soap videos. So that's fun. I did a whole series. I did 2 different series actually, using clays and making confetti soaps out of just soap and clay for my colorants, and they came out gorgeous. And so I wanted to show you a little bit of what I did with those and how I made them and how you can play with that concept. It's actually pretty simple to do. You just have to know, you just have to choose your clays basically and decide on what type of soap base you want, what type of colorants, not colorants, what type of fragrance, if you want to use regular fragrance oil or if you would like to use essential oils. Please make sure you know the amount you can use for essential oils. They can be quite skin sensitizing if you're not sure what you're doing. Just like with fragrance oils, you want to look up the recommended amounts from IFRA or from the manufacturer of your essential oils, or your distributor, whoever tends to give out that information for you. I guess it's going to be a little different with each company, but they should offer the information. And if they don't, they might not be a company you want to work with. So real quick, because you're looking here at the ending-ish, you're looking at my individual pieces. There's a few that just have a stripe because at the end it was setting up at the very edges, which is what soap always tends to do in a loaf. The edges are going to set up first. But I think they look like clouds. I think it looks like a kind of a gray-green sky, maybe even kind of a cloudy, rainy kind of sky with white clouds in it. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know what it looks like to you, but if you have any thoughts on that, please leave those in the comments. If I left out information, because sometimes I interrupt myself and don't get back to it, if I left out any information on the clays I'm using or how I incorporated them or anything like that, please feel free to leave your questions in the comment section of this video. I will try to get to them as soon as possible. If I ever don't answer a question on there, it just means I haven't seen it. So feel free to comment it again. Or sometimes if you comment rather than reply, I will see it before I see a reply. So if you've already commented and then I've replied and you reply back, I don't always see it. It just depends on how YouTube is working things at the moment. And the notifications kind of vary a little bit as they're shifting things and changing things. And I'm hoping that any of this information was helpful to you. If you want to try some clays, please do. And I hope that you follow the series. Thank you so much. Bye.